Hi there! So following up my previous list of the top 10 Star Trek episodes of all time, I am now going to follow up that list with my ranking of the current 13 Star Trek movies that are out there. There's 13 of them now. I'm not going to bother to do a top 10 list. I'm just going to do them in order of which ones I think are the best and which ones are pretty good, because they're all good but not quite the best. So here we go. 13. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. I've seen a lot of people say that this movie was just a bad idea and it was stupid and they should have never did this idea. But I gotta be honest, I think this idea is a great idea. Star Trek is all about, exploring things scientifically and openly and logically. And one of the age-old questions that's been all over mankind really since history started is, where do we come from, and who created all this, and what's the purpose of all this, and is there such thing as God, and if there is, does he know who we are, and what's he all about, and stuff like that, and I think it's right in the game of Star Trek to try to tackle this question. Unfortunately, this question is so big and so hard to tackle. I mean, just look at all the different religions out there and people killing each other over it and stuff, that it's just the kind of thing that I don't think anybody will ever be able to quite get right, short of God himself, maybe. And the other thing that kind of held this movie back, honestly, was, they took a very serious subject and they kept trying to throw jokes in, like Captain Kirk with his "Go Climb a Rock" shirt, or and then of course all of a sudden the Enterprise isn't working right, and then there's a distress signal, and they're at Earth, the huge Federation with thousands and thousands of starships, and of course the Enterprise is the only ship that happens to be in range, even though it's the Romulan neutral zone, which is light years away. So it starts off completely unbelievable, and the best moment of the whole movie is actually this moment right here that we're witnessing on the screen, where they meet God. Of course, it turns out to not be God; it's some imposter pretending to be God. Of course, if you watched the last 20 minutes of this movie is actually pretty good, but the rest of the movie, unfortunately, is just quite terrible. 12. Course, is Star Trek Nemesis. It's such a bummer, because the Next Generation was awesome, and it might even arguably be the best Star Trek. I know that I'm probably going to offend some original series people out there, but pound for pound, New Generation just rules, and to have the very last movie of the New Generation be such a dull and lifeless copycat movie. In fact, you know what? I don't know. This one might even be worse than The Final Frontier. It's just so bad. They try to rip off The Wrath of Khan, of course, because that's the best Star Trek episode, and I don't know, it's got mind rape in it, and it's got a clone of Picard in it, and it's got Riker and Troy getting married, even, and stuff, but it's just a cheesy, fake, plastic, everything about it is just cheesy and plastic and fake, and the space battle's got awesome special effects, and it looks great, and it is so boring. This one, it might be the most boring Star Trek. Because even Final Frontier at least has the moment where they meet God, and then it gets interesting for 20 minutes or whatever. But this one's just awful. Number 11. Well, next up on our list is Star Trek IX: Insurrection. This is a New Generation movie, and like all the other New Generation movies, it just never quite lived up to the greatness of the show. The show is excellent. It's Star Trek New Generation. It might be the best of all the Star Trek shows. It's hard to say, I go back and forth, but man, it's just the Star Trek, the New Generation, the show has just got so much going for it. This movie is not a bad movie, but it's not really a good movie either. It's kind of in the middle. It's more like an episode. It's not even really a good episode. There's a lot of episodes that were better than this movie, and honestly, if you want to get into New Generation, there's a lot of good episodes that I would watch over this one. Like The Best of Both Worlds, or All Good Things, or Chain of Command, or there's just tons of 7 years worth of excellent episodes that beat out almost all of pretty much all of their movies. And which is really disappointing considering how great the New Generation was. So. Number 10. Star Trek Generations, which is basically Star Trek 7. This was the New Generation's first installment into the movie franchise, and it was kind of a letdown, honestly. There was a lot of New Generation episodes that were way better than this movie, including the finale of Star Trek All Good Things. They also made some egregious mistakes, like there was the sculpture that Picard had received from Professor Valen. I believe his name was Professor Valen, that he just, at the end of the movie, he just kind of casually tosses off to the side, but in the original episode, it meant so much to him. Data's emotion chip doesn't look correct. The uniforms don't match, and it's not a bad movie, but they should have been able to do better, especially considering the New Generation's incredible, rich history. Yeah. Number 9. Hello. So next up on our list would be the 8th Star Trek movie, which would be First Contact. Of the New Generation movies, I do think that this is the best of the New Generation movies. However, I have some negative things to say about it. I do think it's overrated. A lot of folks put this high up on their list, because the New Generation is such a great series that they kind of want to put a movie up high on a list. But honestly, the New Generation was a great series, but they didn't do so well in the movies. The beginning of the movie starts out great with the battle against the Borg trying to take over Earth and stuff like that. Except, it was the most exciting part, and it happened right in the beginning of the movie. So then after that, the rest of the movie just feels, really kind of tired and slow and stuff. And, that's what happens when you put your best part in the beginning of a movie. Another movie that suffers from that is the third Star Wars prequel, Revenge of the Sith. It's like the most exciting part of the movies right in the beginning. So when you do that, it's going to cause your movie to lag. Also, Picard was out of character. Like the scene where he's in the holodeck blowing Borgs away with a machine gun, going, "Ah!" and he's screaming and stuff, and that's not Picard at all. Worf is supposed to be off in Deep Space Nine with the whole Dominion War, and conveniently he gets pulled back, and you can just tell they were really trying to force not only this movie, but all of the New Generation movies just felt really forced, like, okay, it's time to make a movie, that's what the Star Trek fans want, and so we can get money and stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's an entertaining flick. It's not their worst outing, but it's not their best either. Number 8. Next up on my list is Star Trek Into Darkness. This is the 12th Star Trek movie, and the second Star Trek movie that had Khan in it, the third story overall that had Khan in it. This is the worst of the reboots, I'd have to say. I know some people think Star Trek 2009 was the worst, but I think that this one is because of all the copycat stuff. All of the copycat stuff, from the Kirk dying, and putting his hand on the glass and Spock, and then them bringing him back to life with Khan's super blood, which, I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and we saw Khan in that, and he doesn't have super blood. He's very smart, he's very intelligent, he's strong and stuff, but he doesn't have powers. He's not magic. Where did they get that? Then there's the transporter beams that can beam you across the whole galaxy and stuff. And oh man, they just took so many shortcuts and just so many things to move the plot along, and just to make this a blockbuster, and make it, and it's almost like they were trying to make Star Wars or something. It's like they wanted to make a Star Wars movie, but they used Star Trek to do it, and it's not the worst Star Trek. It's entertaining. I enjoy watching it. The special effects are great, and blah, 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 blah. And actually, in fairness to the Khan character, Benedict Cumberbatch did an awesome job as Khan. But you know what? That's the other thing. Khan Noonien Singh. He's from India. He's not some white British guy. And I understand that's a kind of a racist statement, but what are they trying to do here? He's an Indian guy. They should have gotten an Indian guy to play him. Benedict Cumberbatch he wasn't right. they tried to force Khan into this, and it's very clear they were trying to make money and force Khan into it. And whenever you focus on the money first, your art suffers. There's a line in the Bible that explains this best: "Seek the kingdom first, and all else will follow." And I think that applies to all forms of art. If you seek the art first, if you're trying to make good art first, like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, for example, which was the lowest budget of all the Star Trek films and made and was the most successful one. But instead they focused on the money and all the little additions and the little scenes, Khan and all this sort of stuff, and the result is they made the worst of the Star Trek reboots, and one of the worst Star Trek movies of all time, actually, really. Yeah, that's my opinion on Star Trek Into Darkness. Number 7. Next up on my list is Star Trek, the 2009 Star Trek reboot by J.J. Abrams. Out of all the movies of Star Trek, I would have to say that this one is the most controversial one. This is the one that's got the biggest divide amongst fans, the biggest separation. I've seen some people say that, man, this movie is such a ripoff and such a copycat that it doesn't even count as Star Trek and it's just a cover band. And I've seen other people say, oh man, this one's the best one. It's got the most action, it's the most fluid, and blah, 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 blah. I'm in the middle. This was an enjoyable movie to me. I enjoyed it. When I go to a movie, I'm going there to be entertained, and this movie entertained me. On the one hand. On the other hand, the people who say that it's a copycat, yeah, I see what you're saying. They basically took all of the Star Trek elements and kind of amplified them up. Like Kirk was kind of a ladies' man, so now all of a sudden he's, with all these girls and all this stuff. And they kind of overdid that, to be honest with you. And then there was the Spock and Uhura thing, which I didn't like at first, but it's grown on me and I accept now. But there was, if they were going to reboot Star Trek, I thought that this was the best way to do it, to do the whole black hole thing, going back and creating an alternate timeline. There were some excellent scenes, like the birth of Kirk's father, or the birth of Kirk, where his father sacrificed his life. I thought was fantastic. I liked the way that they did Christopher Pike. I liked the new Enterprise. Nero was a bit two-dimensional. He was a bit two-dimensional, I thought. I wish they would have fleshed out his character a little bit. It is fleshed out in the book and in the comics, if you haven't read that. But of course, if you're just watching the movie, he's a bit two-dimensional. But the biggest flaw and the biggest mistake they made in this movie, the biggest one, was having Captain Kirk go from Cadet Kirk all of a sudden to Captain, and Spock basically having a temper tantrum, and then later Spock comes back and he's like, okay, well, you can just be the captain now. And it's like, wait a minute, pause, time out. Starfleet is a military organization. You don't just go from being a cadet to a captain, okay? So we really, as the audience, needed to suspend our disbelief on that part in order to accept this movie. And if you're able to do that and accept it as just an entertaining movie, it is a very entertaining movie, and it's got a lot of good things to offer the Trek universe. But if you can't get over that, you are absolutely going to hate this movie, and it might even be number 13, the worst one on your list. But for me, it's somewhere in the middle, because I realize it is a piece of fiction. It is just a movie, and my goal is to be entertained, so I'm able to accept it. Number 6? Yep. So next up on my list is going to be Star Trek 1, the motion picture. Some people call this the motionless picture and talk about how boring it is, and how there's it's all drawn out and it's all special effects, and I disagree. This is an awesome Star Trek movie. Sorry guys, try again. I understand that the comparisons to 2001, it'll never live up to the 2001 by Stanley Kubrick, of course. But as far as Star Trek on the big screen, it's Star Trek on the big screen. One thing I especially love about it is that it's not about like phaser battles or explosions or laser bombs or any of that kind of stuff. It It is Star Trek, not Star Wars. It is completely, there's an unknown thing coming toward Earth, and no one really understands it, and there's only one guy open-minded enough to kind of solve the problem, and it's Captain Kirk and stuff, and of course he's been promoted to Admiral after his awesome success in the 5-year mission. It's Star Trek, man. It's, the fact that they spend, 30 minutes or whatever flying through Voyage, as it's called, exploring it, as you see here, with and all the special effects describing the beauty of it and stuff like that. That's what Star Trek is. Ever since I was a kid with the fantasies about, being on the Enterprise and stuff, this is what we're talking about. I don't fantasize about going and fighting Klingons. I don't want to fight anybody, but I wouldn't mind flying around in my spaceship and exploring strange astronomical phenomenons and stuff. And yeah, it's what Star Trek's all about. Trek, to travel, you know what I mean, in an exploratory way. This is totally Star Trek. I love this movie, and you do have to be in the right mood for it. You have to be in the mood for kind of a slower paced, more chillin', like Bob Dylan kind of movie. If you're looking for like laser battles and all that sort of stuff, maybe you should go with Star Wars 3 Revenge of the Sith or something. I love this movie. This movie rules. Number 5. My list is going to be Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. A lot of people may be surprised, at my placement of this one, and I do think that this was a fantastic movie. It's the completion to the trilogy, the Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 trilogy, and after the crazy events of Star Trek 3, really, what were they supposed to do? They kind of had themselves in between a rock and a hard place after Star Trek 3, and yeah. The places where this movie loses points is on the one hand, I love the going back in time to save the whale story, but on the other hand, really? You know what I mean? That's kind of a hokey story if you think about it, and they pulled it off brilliantly, and it was hilarious, and it was even believable and stuff, but people don't like the Spock's brain episode. Well, this is kind of like the Spock's brain of the movies. They went back in time to save the whales, guys. And then at the end, the weird whale ship that came and was threatening Earth, where are the whales? You're all going to die unless you show me the whales. And then this ship just, okay, the whales are here, and just kind of goes about its merry business, and no one ever finds out, well, like, what was it, friends with the whales, or was it just like a whale, conservationist alien space probe or something? They cut some corners here to force the plot to work and to force Kirk and crew to get back into Star Trek. So ordinarily, I would actually dock it a lot of points for its hokiness and its cheesiness and its fakeness. But man, they pull it off so good. They pull it off so good that it ends up really high on this list. But yeah, it's definitely got its flaws. And out of the trilogy, the 2, 3, and 4, this is the worst of the trilogy. It is. Number 4. Next up is Star Trek Beyond. Star Trek Beyond is the 13th of the Star Trek series, and I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say out of all of the reboots, I think that this is the best reboot. I know I'm going to catch some slack for that and stuff like that, but it's the one that is Star Trek. It's the one that's the most like Star Trek. They didn't have to cut any corners. They didn't have to do any cheating like with Khan's Superblood or with Kirk all of a sudden being promoted from a cadet to a captain or any of that kind of stuff. It was 3 years into the 5-year mission, and it was a Star Trek story, and it was a long one that was 2 hours long, and they pumped some action into it, and it was exciting, and it was good, and it was brilliant, and yeah, this one was awesome. I've seen it twice now, it being the newest one, so I've seen it the least, and man, I already can't wait to go see it again. This one was very, very good, and I guess I wonder if if it's going to stand the test of time like Star Trek 2 or Star Trek 6 will. Number 3. On my list is Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. This was another one that was directed by Nicholas Meyer. Nicholas Meyer is the same fella that did Star Trek 2, and it's my understanding he also helped co-write Star Trek 4, which are two of the great Star Treks. After the problem, the terrible movie that Star Trek 5 was supposed to be, the original crew really needed an awesome finale for their last movie, and they got it with Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country. It's an excellent espionage, whodunit, mystery kind of story. It's got heavy involvement by the Klingons, excellent acting performances. It's got a great flow. The special effects, are not over the top where it detracts from the plot, but they're also, I think that they're perfectly eloquently used and stuff like that. So yeah, Star Trek 6 is a fantastic movie, and definitely one that you should watch. One of the good ones, I would say. Number 2. Next up was definitely Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Oh man, what do we say about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan? It's so many lists have this at number 1, and I mean, even as we're recording this right now, I got to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to put this at number 1 or number 2. It's got so many good things going for it. It's got action, but it doesn't overemphasize the action. The action is a result of the plot and what's going on, and it's so emotional, and it's got pretty good acting for the most part, and this is number 1 on most people's list for good reason. Khan is totally well represented here. Into Darkness, they made him out to be like some magical being with super blood that can bring you back to life. And no, that's not correct. Khan is a genetically manipulated human being. He's a human being, just like me or Kirk or anybody else. He just happens to be smarter and stronger and all those sorts of things. They nailed Khan in this one. If you want to know who Khan really is, this is the one to watch. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Man, this is in fact, this is the movie. If you're a new Star Trek fan, you're like, oh, which one should I watch? Yeah, watch this one. Watch this one first. The beginning of the trilogy: Star Trek II, Star Trek III, Star Trek IV. That's a great place to enter into Star Trek if you're a new Trek fan. I love Wrath of Khan, and who doesn't? Number 1. Yep, you guessed it. Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. I know, I'm crazy, right? Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan should be the best one, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, how in the world could you possibly think Star Trek 3 is the best one? But there's just so many good things about Star Trek 3 that are overlooked. The first time Leonard Nimoy directed a Star Trek. The first time we see an actual Federation starbase. The Excelsior is just awesome. The idea of transwarp. The first time you see the Klingon bird of prey. The first time the Klingons were in character. There's just so many firsts in this Star Trek that ended up becoming regular parts of future Star Treks like The Next Generation and even some of the movies and stuff. And then you start out the movie with your most beloved character, Mr. Spock, is dead, and it's called The Search for Spock, so Spock's a part of it, but what's his part gonna be and stuff. And then the whole the way that the Enterprise crew, Kirk and those folks, are willing to completely sacrifice their careers and give up everything that they have for their friend that they love. And this is the best Star Trek. I mean, come on. This is the best Star Trek. Even Jerry Seinfeld thinks this is the best Star Trek. It's obvious. And it's the continuation of the Wrath of Khan story, which a lot of people think Wrath of Khan is the best movie, and they're almost right. The Wrath of Khan is the best story, and the Wrath of Khan was such a big story that it took 2 movies to tell the story. Star Trek II and Star Trek III are really just the same movie, but I like Star Trek III just a little bit better. So yeah, there you go. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video reflecting my opinion of what the best Star Trek movies are in order from worst to first. The bottom line, Star Trek is great, and even the bad ones are good. They're just all enjoyable movies and stuff, and really this is just more of a fun project than anything else. So I hope it's fun for you too, and have a great day.